Okay, so my name is Rowland Harper. I'm the head of strategic development for the UK supply business for Engie. And I've been asked to give an overview of a collaborative supply and corporate PPA agreement that we put in place with a company called Arla, who you may be familiar with. Now, one of the interesting things we found in research from this is from Hitachi, it's encouraging. So 86% of businesses have a net zero target, which is good. Not enough, but it's still good. Of those, 34% have a plan, which is interesting because when you start looking at CPPAs, you really need to understand what you're after and when. One of the things that we've found is that lots of people talk to us about CPPAs. There's a number of definitions of what they are. There's a number of different ways or different mechanisms for putting them into supply contracts. But what is critical, if you're looking either at energy efficiency, renewable energy, REGOs, or CPPAs, if you don't have a plan, clearly you need to have one there. If you do, you need to understand whether the implications of what you're signing up to is agreed at a senior level within the organisation. So whichever variant of CPA you're looking at, you're committing your company to a volume, price, which is fixed or indexed for 5, 10, maybe 15 years. Now, the energy markets are probably the most volatile commodity markets in the world. So taking a fixed price or knowing what your price is going to be is a very useful thing to some extent, depending how budgets are set and the rest of it. But if your organisation is really looking to chase lower prices from the market, it's at that stage, and perhaps your personal targets are actually driven by achieving those lower prices, a corporate PPA may not be the route that you want to go down. Now, if you do have commitments from your senior board, you can look at different ways of going to the market for CPPAs. You can look at going to generators or developers directly to agree an offtake and look to get that's put into a supply contract by and large, unless you're looking at virtual. Or you can talk to a supplier that you feel comfortable with, who can help you navigate the market, take some of the risk on your behalf, and put in place a supply contract that allows the REGOs and the PPAs to flow through. This is important. Not all suppliers will take on a PPA if you agree it directly. And what you may well end up with is a stranded asset, as in can't be sleeved in, and essentially you're left with a virtual PPA. Now, in the case of Arla were extremely clear about what they wanted to achieve. So 100% renewable energy across Europe by 2025. 100% renewable energy by 2025, but greenhouse gas emissions critical, reduced by 63% by 2030. For us, as the partner, it's an ideal fit. We're committed to 100% renewable energy by 2030. And bearing in mind where contracts are and how people contract, we're pretty much in that window now, but we'll only be selling renewable contracts going forward. And the PPA provider we brought in is an organisation called Infinis. And they're looking to regenerate land, basically landfill land, to create an additional renewable asset for the grid. There is an argument that goes on with putting solar on arable land, or whether the land should be used for producing produce. Obviously, we're owned by farmers. So for being that the Arla is owned by dairy farmers, they were obviously very keen that we should reuse land or repurpose land as opposed to taking up any space that they may want to use. So key to the collaboration was solving the various challenges that we had. Now, what Arla had, they had specific requirements that needed to be in place by specific dates. So speed to market was absolutely of the essence. Moving quickly in the CPPA market is becoming more and more important at this time. We're seeing generators, they have options for placing PPAs with end users, but what they could also do is move that into a merchant model, just selling it onto the market, or they can place into schemes like CFDs. And it goes back to the point that if you're clear about what you want, then we can help you achieve that. If it's going to take a long time from initiating the process to identifying an asset for the sign-off to go through your organisation, there's no guarantee that asset is still going to be there. There's also demand on CPPAs as well. So it's coming from the likes of green hydrogen producers. There are lots of schemes in place. They need additionality. and they need that so they can get the certifications to earn the money for it. We're also seeing a bigger demand from the likes of data centers. Obviously, AI is a huge drain on taking power from the grid. So the other thing to consider, there are delays in grid connections, I think most of us will know about, in capacity. And one thing to note, which is relatively recent, is the likely political policy changes in Europe and across Europe, notably in France potentially, that are going to be happening in the next few months. Some of this will aid developers and organisations such as ourselves to build the projects to sell on the power, but there could be things which go very much against that. The other aspects, internal governance and business cases. I don't know if you're like me, that's always my favourite part of the process, explaining to your senior management for the third time exactly what it means. But what we did with Arla and with Infinis, we made it all very open, everything's very clear, and we brought Infinis in to talk to Arla early on. So a lot of the questions that come up later in the process, they've already been answered, and those messages can be relayed. So it was consistent about how those messages were being put through to the different organisations. So when we came round to the agreement, it was well understood. And bear in mind, it's a 15-year contract. Most people who sign a contract on the end user side, they're unlikely to be in the same job in 15 years. And I've signed this, it's 15 years. I don't intend to be talking to you like in 15 years' time, but on a beach somewhere. So keeping it really simple and making those cases early on so people understand is very, very useful. At some stage, that's going to have to be passed on to somebody else for them to manage. So what we ended up with is repurposing of 2 landfill sites into solar farms and regenerating land. So the PPAs were for 2 PPAs were signed, 20 gigawatts of power from solar, subsidy-free, adds additionality to the grid. It's a 15-year deal, which we agreed in 4 months, and it's quick and it's a scalable solution. Now the point of this is there are certain targets that Arla had in terms of how much volume had to come from PPAs. So what we've done is done the initial 2 projects, but the supply contract allows other PPAs to be layered in. So over time, other projects as they come online will be brought into the supply contract. And the idea, obviously, as we go over time, we're going to get close to their total demand. So CPPAs, they don't have to be complicated. With the agreements we're looking to put in place at the moment, we're trying to keep the mechanisms as simple as possible. One thing to think about is that different generating assets have different profiles. So if you're purchasing for a particular company, especially if you've got demand at night, solar may not work for you. But don't rush in to just taking one large PPA and thinking that is the solution. What you may find is spreading over several generating assets will actually spread your risk. And what it will also do, it will actually potentially much closer match your profile. So, in conclusion, I guess, when you're looking for your CPPA, find the right projects, find the right partner. If you can do, or if that's the route you want to go down, look for contracts that look after the offtake from the PPAs and also supply contracts as well. The supply contract doesn't have to be 15 years, it could be 5 years with a break or something like that, but at least you've got the assurance of that volume actually coming across to you. If you talk to an organisation such as ours, we will help reduce the risk. We'll sit in the middle in between the generators and your site itself, and above all, try and keep it as simple as possible.